On this channel, we talk a lot about senior relocation, and today we're very fortunate to have with us David Lieberman. David?
Hi, I'm David Lieberman, partners in Michael Brodie Senior Placement. Good morning.
And today we're going to talk about senior relocation, everything about it. What are the options? What does it cost? And what does it look like? And I'm sure this is going to be part one of many conversations. Mitchell, your heels on the ground in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. And on this channel, we're going to talk about probate, guardianship, senior relocation, and much, much more. Let's get into it. So, David, we met several years ago before COVID, and I wish that I had met you way before that because I had family members going back 17 years and clients going back even longer than that had relatives that needed to move from their homes into different living structures. And so when we met, I remember it was one of your parents was ill at that time. And
they were both in assisted living, and soon after that, they really moved forward and ultimately passed away. So yeah, and I kind of think we're reconnecting again for a combination of professional and personal reasons because we were speaking about your father as well.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned earlier, my father and his wife are in independent living and they're going to be moving into an adult living facility. And someone like David is able to really help. If you could kind of give an overview about what that looks like, why someone would choose to work with a senior placement specialist such as yourself. And
absolutely, sure. And thank you very much for having me. Senior placement done right works as follows. If someone is aging in their home, usually it's someone in their 80s and 90s, and they and or their families have come to the point that staying at home isn't an option, a senior placement company like ours comes on in and helps to advise them. We don't charge for what we do. Not everyone says that, but that is the truth here. We're compensated not by the client or by their families, but when someone moves into a community that we refer them to, then the community pays us a fee.
So kind of like a realtor with a commission.
In some ways, that is very much like that. As you know from personal experience, there's these other levels to the stresses that goes on with senior placement. From a national and local perspective, just to give you a frame of reference, there are 1.2 million assisted living apartments in the country, and about 27,000 of them are in the Tri-County area down here, with another 10% in addition to that of independent living. So when we talk about all the opportunities to move into places, even here in South Florida, there could be 30,000 apartments of independent living, assisted living, memory care, small 6-bed home-based assisted livings that people can move into. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
I know that you know the difference between all of these levels, and I now, through experience, know the difference between all of these levels. But if you can break it down a little bit between independent living, adult living, memory care, skilled nursing, I think that would be really helpful. And how does somebody know which level their family member is at?
I'll do my best to give this overview in a decent amount of time here, but let's start with independent living. Whereas independent living communities could also have assisted living communities on the same campus, independent living in general is for those that need less hands-on services. They're lovely. There's all kinds of ranges. They usually provide 2 meals a day. They provide transportation, activities, securities, and socialization, of course. And there are communities where doctors can come on in, but anything that you kind of get in addition to those basics, your apartment, a couple of nice meals a day, activities, transportation, etc., is a la carte. So you're paying for, if you wanted a home health aide to come on in, then you would pay for that separately. If you needed physical therapy, that comes through your insurance. So that's independent living. In general, people are a bit younger, more active when they move into independent living. And also, when people move into independent living in a community that also has assisted living, that could be part of their longer term plan to move into independent living, and if they need to, then move into assisted living on the same campus. That's the beginning of that. Now you look at assisted living. Assisted living also comes in all shapes and sizes. There's a standard assisted living, and there's memory care, and there are large assisted livings and as well as small intimate assisted livings in homes. So it's not all the same if you're going to make a decision or if you're looking at it. And that's part of what we can help people to find with the experience that we have down here in South Florida. That right, right solution for whatever someone's needs may be.
One of the mistakes that I made that I didn't know was a mistake at the time, my father actually chose the independent living facility that he was going to be at. And we knew that there was ALF, Adult Living Facility, that was a counterpart to that facility, but we didn't tour it. And although the independent living facility was lovely, when it came time that they needed more help and they needed to make the move to the adult living facility, when my sister and I toured it, we found it woefully inadequate and
Wasn't what you were looking for.
was not what we were looking for. So if I had to do it again, I would definitely, if I wanted them to be able to age at the same place, look at where they were going now, but also look forward to where they may need to go in the future. And that just did not occur to me because I wasn't working with someone like you in doing that. As I said, my father found his own place, and that didn't occur to me. So
You would be the same as 99% of everybody else. And we can get into that a little bit later, but a lot of what's happening is this is a very emotional decision. There's so much going on when it comes to, it's not just a transaction. And neither is real estate. But if you look at the aging process and mortality and family dynamics and maybe a child needing to be the parent in this situation, it's very different. And, just helping them to find a place could be the biggest thing you can do, let alone all the other things that you're describing. But that, again, is what we're there for. We're able to try to help people not just to focus on the emotions, as important as they are, but kind of the realities that are facing and even looking at a bit longer term. That's a good point.
and we always say it's better, 5 years too early than one day too late, because the one day too late could be after the family member has had a fall and broken a hip or had a stroke or, God forbid, a real emergency situation.
Or cognitive changes that kind of have them at the point where they wouldn't be able to enjoy or, become acclimatized to the right community. There's a lot of that. You're absolutely right.
Exactly. So I think it's really important that someone look at their options and contact someone like you earlier in the process than they may think that they need to. I find that by the time someone gets to that point, it's something that probably could have been done a couple of years earlier in a more nice, calm environment rather than in an emergency situation. And so I know in Florida, I'm always going to recommend you because you've been doing what you do forever and you're so good at it.
Thank you.
But thank you. But we have people that are watching us from all over the United States. So what if someone in New York, New Jersey, California has a family member or themselves and they're looking to move to an adult living facility or independent living? How do they find someone like you? What would you suggest to someone?
I have a trick.
Okay.
You would get this trick because you're good at finding resources. But if I were doing this for a relative or recommending for a friend and they said, can you help me? And it was out of state, I would call up a couple of assisted livings or independent livings in the general area. And I'd say, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone like me to do this kind of work for them up there. Who have you worked with before and who would you recommend and why? And then you're going straight to the source. And that's how I get a number of my referrals too, from assisted livings, independent livings, people that have worked with me as well. So that's the kind of simple thing that I would do because, looking up someone online may not give you the answer you want. Now you can back that up by going to their website, et cetera, but that would be my way of getting it, starting with a personal touch.
Hi, this is
Okay,
Ellen
and then
Mitchell. Your
let's say
heels
that
on
a
the
family
ground in the
member
Miami, Fort
contacts you,
Lauderdale
they have
area, and on
a
this
lot of
channel,
times,
we're
in
going
my
to talk
case, the
about
adult
probate,
children are up
guardianship,
north, and
senior
the
relocation, and
person
much more.
that is
Let's get
aging
into
is
it.
down here. I assume you see that a lot as well.
Plenty.
Yeah, the planning. So
when either the person or the family member calls you, can you kind of walk us through what does your process look like?
Okay, so I'll kind of generalize it because sometimes you have family here or there, etc. But in general, the first thing that we start with is that phone call. And I find usually that the family member or the client or the spouse at that point, by the time they're calling us, is ready to talk. So as long as I'm at all available, I want to spend the time with them. I mean, I had one conversation on Super Bowl night at the second half of the fourth quarter this year and just put the TV on mute and let this person talk. So they're going to want to talk about what's on their minds, and I'm going to be asking some questions to get an idea. And I'll ask them what they're facing at this point in time, and those conversations can easily be just for an hour for that first call. What happens next is I want to meet them. I want to meet the client, ideally the family member too. If they're out of town, that's a bit more difficult. Maybe that's a Zoom. But by meeting the client, you get the best idea of not only who they are, how they respond, even what's in their home or apartment. You get an idea of what they're about. And it kind of gives you more of a reality sometimes than their loved ones or themselves who say, I used to play canasta and I used to go jogging and play tennis. But if your evidence is kind of, well, they're past this point and they're needing certain other things, then the more I speak with them, the more time I spend with the actual client, then the better I'm going to do for them. And it also builds up a relationship and trust so they have an idea of where we come from and what we do. Next, then we'll start talking about suggesting communities. And we kind of do this process where we'll put together an email, with a good paragraph or two about the community, their website, and then we discuss those things as well. Based on that, let's say we've given them 5 names just for simplicity's sake, and then they say, we're interested in these 3. It'll be because of all the faith they've had in our conversations. Well, this one based on location or budget or types of activities or whatever you're looking for, that's kind of most important on your checklist. Then we'll go tour. If at all possible, my favorite experience touring someone is to pick them up from their home. Unless their children want to take over, I'm there. I want to pick them up from their home. We bring waters, we bring snacks, and we have a day of it. And so depending, we might, if it's just the client themselves, it might be 1 or 2 places. If it's the children, not the client, it might be 3 or 4. And so by working with them, talking with them before, during, and after tours, I get a great sense of what they're thinking and experiencing right then, and I also get to help them. So I will say this. A lot of companies don't do this. Certainly the national online companies don't do this. I can't imagine wanting to make a decision without having, someone there along the way, and again, at no cost. So after that, we get the feedback. We get the idea of what their sense of timing is. You're absolutely right. There may be some people who are just beginning their search for independent living, and some people who are saying this needs to happen in the next month or so, and then the follow-up is accordingly. So we were going to maybe get together this Wednesday, and now I have a retour with the family who looked at a few places. Now they're bringing mom. The 2 sons are bringing mom, and in this case, I'm meeting them at the communities because they're picking up mom. So then a retour really helps them to fine tune where they are with things. They're down to 2 or 3, maybe 2 communities. They take a second look. They start asking different questions. They might meet the director of nursing in an assisted living or the activities director in independent living. And the more I can help them to feel comfortable with their top places and get their questions answered, the better I'm going to do for them. And then they'll make that decision. After that, we don't need to be involved, but here's what I always do. I visit someone once they're in and settled. I just want to see how they are doing and how they're feeling in their community. It's kind of that final step for me, but I'm always there. We're always there for families if they have any questions down the road. I also find that doing this correctly, there are very few questions that we get after everything because they've kind of gone through this process and they feel comfortable about everything that's been done. So that's my thing.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, I found throughout this process with my family that eating is very important. Because if you think about it, it's like going to the same restaurant every day. So if you go to the same restaurant every day, you better like it. And when we did a tour, we did a second tour at a place yesterday, they provided lunch for us so that we could sit down and eat, and my family could see, did they like the food? Did they like the restaurant? Did they like the atmosphere? I mean, this is where they're going to be eating 2 or 3 times a day for the foreseeable future.
That's true.
So I would definitely recommend that people, maybe not on the first trip, but when you're narrowing it down, that they make sure that they like the dining environment and that they like the food, because it's going to become a really important part of their daily living activities.
Absolutely right. And yes, it's in a sense it's the same chef or chefs making that food. So at least you want to know at the beginning you're happy with it. So that second tour should include something like that if at all possible. Maybe also there's an activity, if there's a happy hour, if there's a special event, if there's an entertainer, you might as well see that community when it's at its best too. You might tour in the morning when it's kind of quieter, but then that second tour should really allow the community to show you the life that your loved one or you might be having when you move in. Perfectly correct.
And then I know the answer to this only because I've been through it, but what if someone doesn't know, is my family member, is independent living right for them? Is adult living facility, memory care? Like, how do you know? Because some facilities offer everything, some facilities only offer one. How do you even know what would be the appropriate placement for your family member?
I'll do my best to kind of answer this in a fairly short time span. I would say it comes from three different assessments. The first one would be ours. And we'll give this perspective. Now, it might not be black and white. It might say, well, possibly independent living, but maybe assisted. We need to see a little bit more and see what's going on. The second one would be if they're taking a serious look at a community, then that assessment would happen from that community as well. They should come on into the community or be visited in their home and have an assessment. Then there's a third, there's a third that's, in parentheses, what the family desires. So for example, someone could be in independent living and have some home health care and still be in independent living. But, that person might be a bit borderline between independent and assisted. And that's what, again, that getting to know them, getting to understand the conversations, getting a good idea of what that client's health is like to see, well, could they be in independent living, in this case, for a month? Or for a year. If it's a month, you don't want to make that kind of decision, even if there's a hope that they can be in independent living. So it's kind of a working through this with them.
Very good. And the things that lead people up to having these conversations, I find it's really, at least in my circumstance and a lot of the clients that I see, it's they're living in a two-story home and it's no longer safe. They decide not to age in place, or someone's had a fall, or grocery shopping and laundry and help with showering and bathing. Those things start to become necessary. And that's the time when people start having conversations about, what could this look like going forward? This isn't a limited time. Looks like it's going to be an ongoing, life-changing, permanent, getting more need rather than less need over time. So we've talked a lot about the processes and the different options in this video, kind of the nuts and bolts of things. But in the next video, we're really going to talk about the feelings, the emotions, the real challenges that go along. So please make sure that you watch episode 2 about this. Again, this is Ellen Mitchell, your heels on the ground. If you enjoyed the video, please like or subscribe. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. I do take the time to read and answer everything, and I will have David's information there so that you can follow up with him.